So now moving on, I want to talk about relationships, and more specifically the relationship between Ren and Nora and the relationship between Yang and RWBY, because they both had really good scenes in this episode, really good fulfilling scenes that honestly I've been waiting for a while now. So now that we got it, like I was so satisfied. I will start in order with Ren and Nora talk with their talk first. I really loved this conversation, and it's because these two characters I feel like I've been holding back throughout all of Volume 7 with like little snide remarks, little comments here and there, and then like sometimes just full on explosions of saying like just a couple sentences, but not saying how they actually felt. And I felt like that was really annoying. But in this chapter here, they did things right. I like how they gave these guys a moment to talk and let out their feelings. I like how Nora, who didn't know what was going on and didn't know that Ren had gone through this whole mental journey, was able to explode her thoughts. Because even if, like, here's the thing. If Ren, even if she knew that Ren suddenly had this epiphany about friendship, there's still that fact that the way that he talked to her, the way that he was acting, like all that stuff is still bottled in inside her. And if she didn't get the chance to let that out, then she could have ended up just resenting him for the rest of their relationship, and then that relationship would have ended. So like I see some comments that say like, oh, Nora was too mean to him, but no, you gotta just let it out. You gotta let out these feelings. Otherwise, if you just let them bubble up inside, even if the person had changed and you do see that they have changed, it'll still cause resentment. So it's really good that Nora was able to have this talk and was able to like just give her opinion. And then after that, I did like how Ren, who did go through this journey, like I said, was able to show that off and apologize and admit that he was wrong. So many times you have these guys like get defensive and go like, no, I've changed, and then they go right back, or they start a new fight. But I do like how he instead comforted Nora, because Nora started blaming herself too, because if you remember, like her self-worth is like going down the toilet. And now we also know why, which I'll get to in a second. So it was nice to see Ren, tell her all the great qualities about her, and then end it with an I love you. And that's what I love about you. I really did like this scene. I felt like it hit all the boxes that it needed to. It did it naturally. The voice acting was great. The visuals were great. And then we get a little bit of backstory with Nora. And apparently her mom is in the running for Best Mom of the Year award. She's right next to Raven. So I wonder if we're going to see her again. Like Nora said, she was left for the Grim. Her mom ran, maybe out of fear, maybe out of not misunderstanding. Maybe she was forced to leave, and we don't really know what happened until maybe we get her side of the story. Since she's not dead, there's a chance that we will see her again. I'm thinking maybe Vacuo or something like that. And then after that, we can get that reconnection, and either she actually did leave her for dead, and now the mom is gonna have to like either try and apologize and make things right, or maybe she's just gonna continue going down that path of leaving her daughter. We don't know. That's like future stuff right now. The point is that action affected Nora's self-worth, because hey, if my mom doesn't want me, if my mom's gonna leave me for human eating creatures, then maybe that's all I'm good for. So it is nice to get a little bit of a backstory on that, and it really does show that Nora has really just been holding this in. We don't know, of course, if this was planned from the beginning, but either way, this does affect everybody's view on Nora now, because now she is this character who's just been holding this in and just smiling and trying to lift everybody up through her own pain. So it really is nice to elevate that character and upgrade her even more. And then just this conversation ends with Nora saying that she needs to find herself and that they need to take a break, and hopefully Ren will be okay with that. And he was. This was a really good we need a break scene, because usually how these things go is one gets into a fight, another gets into a fight, and then after that it's like, maybe we shouldn't even be together. And then they end up getting together like 2 seasons later. So it really is nice to get a more calmer, realistic, nicer way of taking a break from each other. Moving on with Yang and RWBY, this is another great scene between these two. This good like the sister bonding scene. We honestly don't get a lot of those scenes with just the two of them. Like, I'm not saying that Yang has not been a big sister to RWBY, because like, especially in like volume 5, she traveled like this long way just to see her sister. I'm just saying that we haven't really gotten moments just them two alone talking. And now that we finally got it, I think it was done very well. For starters, like I like how Yang started off trying to comfort RWBY, and then at the end just ended up breaking down herself because Summer Rose started to get involved in the conversation. And it really does show that they have that connection between the two of them, like this connection of suffering that has to do with the family. Like this is something that, you know, Weiss, Blake, John, so on and so forth can't understand, because this is like a family matter. So that's why, I mean, like, I do like how she's not able, Yang is not even able to hold herself when Summer is involved. It was very human. It was very realistic. I did feel like Yang's emotions were a bit too dramatic when she started crying, like the arching your back and then falling to your knees. I felt like that was a bit too much. I also thought that was a bit too much also when RWBY did it in Volume 7. But that one I was able to excuse a little bit more because the goddess of Grimm is basically saying that I killed your mom. So that I completely understand, even though I did think it was a little bit too much. This one I felt like it was too much, and there wasn't much of an explanation, not an explanation why, but a reason why. I think what would have been better is just to have Yang put her hand over her eyes, tears coming down. You can hear her struggling to keep the tears in and not cry, but you can just hear her, you know, like, she can't fight it. She starts crying, but she remains standing, and she's just looking down like this, and just she's trying to hold back these tears, but it's not possible. I feel like that would have been better, just because it also would have reinforced her trying to comfort her sister and it not working. And also I just feel like, I don't know, it's just more realistic. You know, I think I'd see more people like put their hand over their face and then like just cry while standing, instead of like doing the whole arch back, land on your legs, and then going like this. I felt like that was a bit too much. This is a really interesting thing though. When RWBY mentioned, when RWBY asked, did Blake tell you what was underneath the Grimm? And Yang said, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I'm wondering, did she know that RWBY was going to mention the silver eyes? Was this her saying, you don't have to worry about it, Salem won't get to you, I will protect you, we will protect you? Or was she focusing on the fact that there was a human underneath, and that RWBY was technically involved in killing another human being? That would be really interesting if it was the latter, because we know that Yang and Blake had to kill Adam, and we know in Volume 7 that it wasn't as perfect as we thought. It's still in their mind. They're questioning whether it was right or not. And I'm wondering if this was Yang saying, hey, I know you think that you killed a human, but it was too late for him. Don't worry too much about it. You're just going to destroy yourself thinking about this. Which would honestly be reminiscent of something that happened in the MCU with Black Widow telling Hawkeye not to worry about how many people he killed when he was under Loki's control.
Tasha, how many agents did
Don't do that to yourself, Clint. This is Loki. This is monsters and magic and nothing we were ever trained for.
I feel like that was very similar to what Yang could have possibly been doing, which is like just, it happened, there was no choice. You beating yourself over it would have been pointless. I do hope it is the latter, because that would bring some interesting topics in the future, like Yang not being okay with the fact that she killed Adam, having to kill another human being. You know, it's a lot harder than it looks, you know? So I'm wondering if that's what was going on here. And then after that, RWBY mentioned Summer, and then after that, she was like, oh, okay, you're talking about the silver eyes. And then she got, overwhelmed by a wave of emotions and started crying because Summer, like I said, got involved. So I'm wondering if that was the case. I hope we get a little bit more insight. If not in this volume, probably Volume 9, exactly the topic of having to kill humans, because if there are more high-end Grimm out there, that have humans inside them, and they have to like take them down, like that conversation needs to be had. We then have Yang, kind of like putting herself back together and then trying to talk RWBY out of her funk. And I really do like the dialogue that they had here, especially when Yang like went, if you hadn't noticed, our plan didn't work either. Like, you had that like familiar talk between the two of them. Like, Yang is not overly polite because she doesn't have to be. Like, usually you have to like, be like calmer and like, polite when you're talking to someone, especially if you're trying to like shake them out of whatever funk that they're in. But Yang doesn't have to do that because RWBY is her sister, so she can be as familiar as she possibly can, and she could be like, hey, look, you're not the only one that failed, we failed too, all right? So I really do like how, you know, that was that familiar dialogue in this scene. And then after you have Yang basically talking about optimism, hope, risk. Name of the episode, they say risk so many times in this chapter. But a lot of this reminded me of Levi from Attack on Titan and how he said something similar. Basically, and I guess like Ironwood said something similar too as well.
In the end, you choose what you choose. If afterwards your regrets are at a minimum, good for you.
Basically, when the battle starts and you have a plan in your head, and you know it's a plan that's off the books, but you believe that it's right, then at the end of the day, it's up to you to choose: is it right or is it not? And like, because you know you don't have that plan, you don't have that time to be like, hey, is this the perfect plan? Is this a sure enough plan for me to win? Sometimes you just have to go with your gut, and you have to deal with the consequences, whether it's good or bad. Similar here, like these guys made a lot of bold moves. So not every bold move is by the book is going to be liked by everyone, both in the show and in the community. So I do like this conversation that they had, even if it does seem like they were kind of talking to the fans a little bit. And then finally they mentioned Summer having to take a risk, and it did remind me of Red Like Roses part 2, when who I assume is Summer was like, I didn't want to do this, I didn't think this was how it was going to go, and I left you all alone. Obviously we know that she was planning on coming home, but it did really remind me of Red Like Roses part 2 when that was being said.